Okay, because we have few public comments on item 3, we're going to switch it around and we're going to put it up first, and then we're going to move Traffic Safety Commission draft work back next. And before I do that, I want to make sure that everybody that would like to speak on item 3 has turned in their cards. Okay, last chance. I would have to recuse myself because I'll be the incoming PTA president at Valley Middle School, which is conflicting with very close to the intersection. So because of that, I will recuse myself and I'll let Vice Chair Johnson take over for this item.
You ready, John?
I think so. Good late afternoon, Commissioners, Vice Chair. I'd like to present this staff report in response to a request for an all-way stop at the intersection of Tamarack Avenue and Valley Street. Tamarack Avenue is classified as a neighborhood connector street in the mobility element.
Does he have a microphone?
Is it on? Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Tamarack Avenue is classified as a neighborhood connector street in the mobility element of the general plan. The street features curb and gutter, sidewalk, and street lights on both sides of the street. Tamarack Avenue in the vicinity of Valley Street has a single vehicle lane, a parking lane, and a bicycle lane in each direction, separated by a painted center line. The subject intersection serves as a connection between the residential neighborhood and 3 nearby schools, Valley Middle School, Magnolia Elementary, and also Carlsbad High School. Tamarack Avenue is uncontrolled currently at Valley Street. Valley Street is controlled by a minor leg stop sign. There are painted yellow crosswalks across Tamarack Avenue at Valley Street, as well as across Valley Street. The uncontrolled marked crosswalk across Tamarack Avenue has been augmented with a rectangular rapid flashing beacon system, which provides a pedestrian-activated flashing beacon to help pedestrians cross the roadway. The adjacent intersections on Tamarack Avenue, Highland Drive, which is approximately 1,080 feet to the west, and Park Drive, which is located about 340 feet to the east, are all-way stop controlled. The posted speed limit on this portion of Tamarack Avenue is 30 miles per hour. Staff received multiple requests to help pedestrian access across Tamarack Avenue. These requests were verbalized at the November 5th Traffic Safety Commission of last year. Some of the things that were mentioned at that Traffic Safety Commission by the public were vehicle speeds on Tamarack Avenue. Based on that comment, staff reported that there is a speed feedback sign project that will be installing 2 permanent speed feedback signs on Tamarack Avenue on either side of Valley Street. That project is currently in construction administration right now. We do have a contractor on board to build it. I've been told that we're waiting for materials before construction begins, but hopefully that project will start soon. Also mentioned at this November 5th meeting by the public was a concern about pedestrian access, especially children, as they cross Tamarack Avenue at Valley Street. We reported at the time that staff had conducted an adult crossing guard analysis. It did not meet the criteria recommended in the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, but based on the public input, the police made a decision to fund adult crossing guards at this intersection, and that has been implemented. There was also request to put in an always stop at Tamarack and Valley, and because of those requests, we conducted the studies, and that's why we've scheduled the staff report to report upon the results of the studies of an always stop analysis. The criteria that the City of Carlsbad uses to analyze requests to put in a multi-way stop or an all-way stop is based on the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It's found in section 2B.07, and there are 4 criteria, and I'm going to go over each of those criteria for the benefit of the commissioners. The first criteria A, is called the interim traffic control measures criteria. This is satisfied where a multi-way stop can be considered an interim measure before you put in another traffic control, such as a traffic signal most commonly. Since there are no current or proposed capital improvement program projects for a traffic signal at this intersection, this criteria is not satisfied. Criteria B is called accident experience. In order to meet this criteria, 5 or more reported collisions within a 12-month period that are susceptible to correction by an always stop need to occur. These crashes are right-angle collisions typically, since those are the ones that would be corrected by an always stop. Our collision records, we went back about 5 years from 2015 to the present. There was 1 reported collision in that time period at the subject intersection. So based on those findings, criteria B is not satisfied. Criteria C is the minimum traffic volume criteria. It looks at both the major street vehicular volume and also the minor street vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle volumes, as well as vehicle delay if the volume requirements are met. It's based on, you use different numbers based on speed. If it's a speed with a posted speed limit of 40 miles per hour or greater, you use the rural number. Other than that, you would use the urban number, which is the number under the U. The posted speed limit on Tamarack is 30 miles per hour, as I mentioned previously, so you would use those values. Looking at the combined approach volumes for the major street, there was an average of 639 vehicles per hour for the highest 8 hours. That does satisfy the minimum of 300 vehicles per hour, as you can see, but the minor street combined volume, the average was 96, and that does not meet the 200 required to meet the minor street volume criteria. So that is not satisfied. To satisfy criteria C, all of the criteria must be satisfied. So when it doesn't satisfy C.2a, this criteria is not satisfied. And because of that, we did not conduct a delay study because it's not required. So based on our findings, the minimum traffic volume criteria is not satisfied. The last criteria is a combination of criteria. If it meets a combination of 3 criteria, you can reduce those values to 80%. So in other words, if there are 4 or more reported crashes within a 12-month period and the major street volume is at least 240 vehicles per hour, and if the minor street volume is 160, if those 3 in combination are combined, this criteria would be satisfied. As you can see, the collision criteria portion and the minor street portion are not satisfied, so therefore criteria D is considered not satisfied. There are optional criteria available to consider. These are based on engineering judgment. There are no values associated with the criteria. Staff looked at them, and I'll go over each of them individually to explain why staff feels that these optional criteria were not satisfied for the subject location. The first option is left turn conflicts. Our traffic studies indicated that there were about 117 vehicles turning left from southbound Valley Street and 86 in the PM. From eastbound Tamarack, the peak hour turning volumes were 124 in the morning and 63 in the PM. Based on this, we consider that to be insufficient left turn volumes to require everyone to stop. Option B is vehicle and pedestrian conflicts. If you go back, it says the need to control vehicle pedestrian conflicts near locations that generate high pedestrian volumes. Again, there are no numbers given, it's just a matter of engineering judgment. Because the past studies for adult crossing guards were not met, and with the additional factor of the city or the police department providing adult crossing supervision at the intersection during school hours, staff feels that option B is not satisfied. Option C is sight distance, and then I'll go back to show you what it says. Locations where a road user, after stopping, cannot see conflicting traffic and is not able to negotiate the intersection unless conflicting cross traffic is also required to stop. You could also consider that as an optional consideration. Staff measured sight distance. In the highway design manual, the minimum stopping sight distance for 30 miles per hour is 200 feet. The sight distance from Valley looking to the west or to the right is approximately 280 feet. Sight distance from the same location looking to the east or to the left was approximately 386 feet. Since the available stopping sight distance exceeds the minimum stopping sight for 30 miles per hour, staff does not consider this optional criteria to be satisfied. Option D is a residential street option, and let me go back. It says an intersection of two residential neighborhood collector streets of similar design and operating characteristics where multi-way stop control would improve traffic operational characteristics of the intersection. Due to the proximity of the stop-controlled intersection, especially at Tamarack Avenue and Park Drive, it's only 340 feet. Staff feels that an always stop at Tamarack and Valley would not improve the traffic operations at that intersection. So therefore, we believe that option D is not a consideration. So based on our findings, staff recommends that an always stop not be established at the intersection of Tamarack Avenue and Valley Street. That concludes my staff report, and I would be happy to answer any questions that the commissioners might have.
Thank you. We'd like to have commissioners make some questions. Can we start with Commissioner Perez?
Yeah, can you go back to, on that slide, is it option C?
The actual list, this one?
Keep on going forward. Option C, yeah, correct, thank you. Distance from 386 feet, so that just, distance from Valley Street looking east, approximately 386 feet, is that looking towards Park? Or is that?
Looking to the east is towards Park.
Okay, and then the sight distance looking to the right, to the west that's heading towards Highland.
Highland,
correct? Okay.
yes.
So I'm just trying to understand on that part. So where Valley and Tamarack is in between Valley and Highland. There's a, I believe, a field, right, or a track?
2 tracks.
On the northwest
2 tracks.
Football field.
corner, there's athletic fields.
Okay, so athletic field. So I understand the part with, this is not a question, but I understand the part that in regards to during school hours with a cross guard, but also we also take into consideration about events, because I believe there are like track events or anything like that that can actually increase congestion or population between that area. And just with that, my question is in regards to, I think it's criteria B, crashes at a right angle. Is that just vehicles, or is that actually pedestrians included in
The criteria, we would definitely consider pedestrian collisions.
And then you said during that time when there was a survey, there was only one accident or incident?
Yes, we have a database of reported collisions that we receive from the police department. Actually, it's shared now that we use the police database.
And there was only, you said there was only one?
In that time period,
And what was
yes.
that time period, I'm sorry?
January 1st, 2015, until today.
Did I write that? Yeah, that's correct. From January 1st, 2015 to 5/20/2019.
Okay. I'm good with my answers, or my questions, thank you.
Commissioner Blanky?
There's a revision that was inserted for the staff report. I was wondering what the revision was.
There's an error in the totals. If you look at the bottom row, that's kind of shaded. Those were the numbers that were corrected.
Okay. I would note that the subtotal under Valley Street and at 1,500 to 1,600 was probably, that's still wrong, but that's probably why that number was wrong at the bottom. It says there were 995, I think, so there's still an error there, might want to correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he corrected the subtotal, but he corrected the total, but the subtotal.
I see the mistake. That will be corrected. Thank you for pointing that out.
So the adult crossing guards, is that a permanent situation or is that temporary? I wasn't clear on that.
I believe that's a permanent situation, that it will also be continued.
Okay. Is there any information on the speed, the distribution of speed of the vehicles?
We do have a valid speed survey which would show the speed distribution, but I do not have that on hand.
Okay. Is it significantly different, you think, than the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, or don't you know?
Yes.
What was the question?
If you look at the speed distribution on that speed survey, is it significant, like how would it compare to the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit that's there?
It would support the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, in that the critical speed on the speed survey would be within 5 miles per hour of the 30. That's how we establish our speed limits.
Or was there an exception made that the speed limit was made lower there? I know there's a mechanism to go down further. So you don't know what the...
I don't have it offhand.
Okay. So my last question is, we have language and policies in our mobility element that promote the Safe Routes to School program. And I'm going to paraphrase policy 3P27, which says, implement the Safe Routes to School program that focuses on pedestrian and bicycle safety improvement near local schools. And then there's another policy, 3P17, that provides examples of potential alternatives that can be considered. In other areas of the mobility element, say that exceptions can be made in order to do the promotion of safe routes to schools in other areas. So if the always stop isn't sufficient, do you think that the flashing beacon, the crosswalk, and the adult crossing guards are sufficient for the for the perceived problem that's there, or are there other methods that could be used consistent with the mobility element, safe routes to school, et cetera, that could be installed there to make it safer?
Well, possibly, but staff does not have any specific recommendations other than that the findings that have been presented today.
Okay.
Are you through?
Yep.
Commissioner Fowler?
So the primary complaint of citizens is that it's hard to cross Tamarack, is that
That was one of the complaints that was voiced at the previous Traffic Safety Commission meeting, yes.
Okay, we're there, so we can talk about others, but, so, is there a way to quantify that? Do you have a way in, for example, measuring speed and all of that for other kinds of traffic problems? This must be a common complaint. Is there a way to quantify that and compare it to other intersections, or is it just, is that one of those things that never quite gets measured, or people haven't figured out how to measure it, or?
There are criteria for different features, such as an always stop, and so based on the requests that we receive, we would run the analysis. I guess you could compare the results of those analysis with other intersections, but there's no value or criteria specifically to judge difficulty in pedestrian crossing that you mentioned.
And what were the other complaints for that?
I think speeding along Tamarack Avenue, vehicle speeds, was probably the more commonly voiced complaint.
And, okay, thank you.
Commissioner Penzers?
You mentioned there was just one collision, and can you be a little bit more specific on what was the cause, who was involved? Was it two motor vehicles, or a motor vehicle and a pedestrian, or whatever?
I don't have the data for that particular collision. I can pull that up later, and if the commissioners are interested in the details of that collision.
Yeah, the last time that you came to us with a recommendation for a stop sign, you did that, and that was very revealing because the collisions had nothing to do with whether a stop sign would affect it or not. So that was the reason for the question. So I'd like to see that, actually.
Okay.
Commissioner Hunter?
No questions?
I have some questions. On the recommended action item, portion of it, you don't state what you expect from the Traffic Safety Commission. Do you want our endorsement of your recommendation, or is this for informational purposes?
I guess that's up to the Traffic Safety Commission. I think staff felt that even though it did not meet the criteria, and we commonly don't bring items that don't meet the criteria to Traffic Safety Commission, since it was requested by the public, I thought it would be appropriate to allow the public to give their voice to this report.
Okay. Along with that same, the executive summary, on the second line, I think you should remove the word "does not" and just say staff recommends that the city council not establish, just to make it the language
A little clearer. Understood.
And then also on the second page where it says necessary council action, I would recommend that you reword that so that it says if approval of an always stop was, it would require instead of must, just to kind of soften the language. And then on page 1, where you have your multi-way stop criteria, can you tell me why the hours of 9 to 11 o'clock and 13 to 1400 hours were missing from your data?
The highest 8 hours.
Pardon me?
They took the highest 8 hours.
Yes, but I understand that I could understand 9 to 11, but the 1600 to 1900 hours is post-school traffic. So that was unclear to me. I don't know if that changes your numbers or.
Typically, we would do for an always stop, we would do the highest volume, and that would include the pedestrians as well. Usually are much more vehicles than pedestrians, so commonly we would use the highest 3-hour period for vehicular volume and then extract the highest periods from that.
Okay, that makes sense. Also, can you tell me when you performed these counts? Was it on a particular date or?
The counts were conducted on a Tuesday, March 19th of 2019.
Thank you. Any other questions? We can open it up for public. Thank you.
He's got one more question.
Oh, yes, Commissioner?
On Tuesday, March 19th, when you did this count, were the weather conditions normal, or was it raining? Was something that would cause that to be different from a normal day?
Typically, we do discount counts that would occur during inclement weather, and so it's my assumption that that day was a clear day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? On our public, we have Joe Gonzalez. And you have 3 minutes.
Joe Gonzalez, 4015 Park Drive. We've lived there for 45 years before the street went through. So we've seen numerous accidents. I've seen more than 3 or 4 in the last 4 years. So we have been trying to get a hold and talking to people for the last 2 years. And on May 15th, 2017, it said that our traffic team has decided that we will provide curb extensions on the south side of Tamarack Valley by the crosswalks. Those crosswalks is dangerous. Myself and the people that all live there, we've basically almost been hit hundreds of times, and I wish I was exaggerating. People do not stop. Also, if you're going east on Tamarack, on Tamarack, where the flashing lights were, the ones on the south side of the street, they can't see. So basically, we've been trying to get them to do something so they'd be more visible for people coming across. And again, for some reason, I have this that was sent on May 15, 2017 about putting curb extensions out, which we thought were a pretty good idea. But then all of a sudden, that never materialized. Since I live on that corner, basically the speed is faster than 30 miles an hour, consistently throughout the whole week. We can see at different times. It's going to vary. Since I sit on the corner, we can tell a car coming up the hill going east that who is not going to stop at that stop sign in front of our house. So if it's not going to be going slow enough to stop at the stop sign at our house, when it passes that crosswalk, it's even going faster. And again, if you're on the south side of the street trying to cross, that's a blind cross, especially if somebody's parked there. So a bunch of us neighbors been trying to get this going for a while, and I've been pushed around the city over and over again. But again, when we saw this about the curbs, we thought that would be something that would be positive, that would happen. And like I said, nothing has happened. So, I mean, I've lived there for 45 years. I lived there before the street went through. The last 2.5 to 3 years since all those new houses have come in across the way down there in El Camino, more traffic. I was told by somebody in the city that Tamarack is a thoroughfare, not a residential. And what we would suggest is somehow the city start pushing cars toward Cannon and Village, used to be Elm, because there's no houses there, okay? And in my neighborhood, in the last 4 years, 5 years, we're actually getting younger and younger couples coming in with more children. People will not let the kids cross. 5 months ago, 4 months ago, we have a group of about four kids between, they're middle school, not middle school, they're probably 8 to 9, 10, ride their bikes. The people would not let them cross the street. A 12-year-old had to get out in the middle of the street and stop them.
I'm sorry to have to cut you off.
I know, but-
Thank you. Thank you.
If somebody could answer about that curb thing.
Our next person is Jean-Marc, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, Duvangel. Sorry if I slaughtered your name.
Everybody does. All right, 3 minutes, right? Okay, my name is Jean-Marc Dumouchel. I live at 1529 Tamarack, which is directly across the street from the junior high school football field. I've lived there for 25 years. In those 25 years, I've had 2 cats hit by cars, 3 children have been hit in front of my house, 2 dogs have been hit in front of my house, 2 cars have actually hit my house. I actually live at the bottom of 2 hills, so they're coming from both sides. My neighbor just to the south of me has been hit twice in the rear end trying to park in her driveway by people speeding. And of course, I've seen thousands of near misses. At night, when the wife and I are sitting around eating dinner or watching TV, you can hear the motorcycles up on Highland. By the time they cross my house, which is 426 feet later, they're already in 4th gear doing 60 miles an hour. And this is not unusual at all. The distance from Valley to Park is actually 125 yards, 375 feet. A stop sign on Valley and Tamarack will do absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. When I'm in town and I walk my dog, I'm currently on my 3rd dog, I always go through that intersection, and if a pedestrian is not in the crosswalk, nobody stops. You can't see a pedestrian. You can't see them when they're on the other side. It's just a blind corner, and people just blow right on by. So my suggestion, my solution to all this is what we need is a roundabout on James and Tamarack. What this will do is it'll solve 3 distinct problems. For one, it'll slow traffic down on both directions. For 2, it'll keep cars out of the parking and bicycle lane in the morning when the schools the kids are being allowed for school. Every morning there's a big long line going west on Tamarack, and somebody inevitably goes in that parking lane and goes up the right side trying to cheat. They do it all the time, every morning. And 3rd and lastly, it'll allow pedestrians, dogs, and school children to cross Tamarack safely. Because if there's a roundabout there, the cars are slowing down and they have to allow pedestrians to cross the walk. I've waited 15 minutes at a time to cross Tamarack to get my dog across. How am I doing? I'm done. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Joy Bryson.
A little bit shorter. I'm Joy Bryson. I live at 1510 Tamarack Avenue. I live just beside the field. My house actually looks down at the field. I believe that we either need stop signs, roundabouts, anything to slow down traffic. I have 2 small children, and it terrifies me. I've almost been hit getting my mail 2 times. Last time I brought this up at the council meeting, they laughed at me. I thought it was really inappropriate, by the way. I've met with John, I've met with the police chief, I have met with the mayor, I've met with everyone possible. I spent 3 hours talking to people in my neighborhood about this meeting, trying to get people to come. With where we're requesting this crosswalk be, it's a blind, or excuse me, the stop signs, it's a blind corner. So if there's kids pushing the button, you can't see the lights. If cars are parked there, you can't see the lights. It's not safe. Kids cannot cross, like if they're standing on the sidewalk and they step out, even if they step into the bike lane, you can't see them. There's cars parked there. So no matter what, it's just not safe for kids to cross. I don't know if, because they said that this crossing guard was with a grant. Grant money is not for sure money. So that would probably not be a permanent solution. Also, people do drive in the bike lane. That's where I've almost been hit, is because my house is closer to Highland. So people drive past my house in the bike lane at like 40 plus miles an hour. I've called the police so many times I can't even count regarding the speeding in the bike lane. Regarding the fact that people will drive pretty much from almost Valley in the bike lane speeding. So there's something needs to be done with that. If you look at other cities, you look at Encinitas, they put in green colored bike lanes with bump barriers on Lacadia Boulevard. They put in speed humps on 101 that fire engines can get through. You were saying that this is not a thoroughfare street? If you talk to anybody else, that's what we were told it was, so that the fire department, the police department can get down our street. The police activity has gone up like 100% on my street since I bought the house 5 years ago. So I used to never hear sirens. I hear sirens like almost daily. So something has changed with that, with their routes. But that's a whole nother beast. The issue on our street is speed. People are speeding. There's not a safe way for kids to cross. I have a 2 and a 3-year-old, and it's like, I can't even let them out my front door. I'm terrified to take them out my door and try to get a 2 and a 3-year-old in my car because my road is so dangerous. So I'm hoping that somebody actually hears us for once. This is my 3rd meeting regarding this stuff, so please do something about Tamarack. And I've almost been hit, my stroller's almost been hit by cars, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we have Brenda Harai.
Can I please have that picture with the street and that aerial picture?
Ellen?
No, it's John.
Sorry.
Got it. This one.
Yeah, that one. Thank you very much. I brought mine. Hi, my name is Brenda Harai, 5061 Ashbury Road. I have been a parent at Valley Middle School for 5 years. First off, thank you and the police department for providing the wonderful crossing guard. She has been an immense help. I see many more students crossing now and in a safer fashion. The engineering study undertaken by the city didn't meet the specific numerical criteria for a 3-way stop. I would like to weigh in on the optional criteria because this intersection does meet 3 of these criteria. First criteria, left turn conflicts. I am one of those 117 vehicles making that left turn every school day for 5 years. It is very, very difficult to get out. There is a long line of cars backing up on Valley. Oh, that doesn't work. Okay. The cars come west speeding down that hill. The cars back up on Valley. The cars coming down are spaced evenly apart by that stop sign at the top of the hill, just enough that you can't make that turn safely. We have been almost broadsided numerous times. Second criteria, vehicle pedestrian conflicts in a high pedestrian area. The crossing guard has greatly improved pedestrian safety. However, what I see happening now is that the drivers making the left turn onto Tamarack will rapidly stream out, one after the other, maybe 5, 6 cars, when the crossing guard stops traffic on Tamarack. So she's letting kids cross Tamarack, and the cars are like trying to get out, rapid fire. They do not stop at this crosswalk. Some don't even slow down. They're taking this opportunity to make the left turn because it's the easiest way for them to get out. I have seen a Buenos bike almost get hit because he crossed Valley while the crossing guards was helping kids cross Tamarack. The cars making the left turn were streaming out, and he came from behind them and entered the crosswalk. The student didn't wait for traffic to stop, but it happens. In conversation with the crossing guard, she is concerned that when cars pull out like this, if the oncoming car doesn't stop and broadsides the car making the left turn, this accident will be pushed into the crosswalk where she has kids crossing. She is also concerned that some cars stop inches from the crosswalk. She emphasized that the cars and drivers needed to slow down. She has seen numerous almost accidents. The third criteria, a road user after stopping cannot see conflicting traffic. If you see that field right there, if someone parks their car on the north side of Tamarack along that field, which happens a lot, there is no way when you're making that left turn off of Valley to look east, and I don't know how many feet, John, there probably wasn't cars parking there, because when I look east, you cannot see Tamarack. You can see 30 feet until that car. So kids, what happens is they're stopped there, they're in the, so for me to pull out left, I have to go into that crosswalk.
Your time's
And-
up, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Thank you.
and the kids are crossing around me in the road and between cars.
Next, we have Meredith Gruinski.
Kirsten.
Gerkens, okay, sorry.
Okay. Hi, I'm Meredith Gruskin. I live at 5554 Coyote Court, Carlsbad. I have 4 children, 2 of which are at Valley now. One has already moved on to Carlsbad High. I was at the November 5th meeting when we brought this to your attention initially, and there was over an hour's worth of reasons why we needed this stop sign. So, you know, my biggest puzzlement of this is why do we have to go this far to get a stop sign? It's an inexpensive solution. And your traffic study done from 2015 was before Robertson Ranch was even built. So the community members go down the back way of Robertson Ranch, and then that's how they get across to the village. You know, like they said, that Tamarack's a thoroughway. So the cars are going extremely fast. It really bothers me as a parent to sit here and say, well, because we haven't had 5 collisions in 12 months, we're not gonna give you a stop sign. So whose kid's gonna die first? Like, why can't we be proactive instead of reacting to somebody getting hurt? So I just feel like this is a no-brainer, like put up a stop sign. It's inexpensive, you're gonna prevent a casualty. So why not do it? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Veronica Williams.
My name is Veronica Williams. I'm at 1373 Magnolia Avenue. At the previous meeting on November 5th, on this item, there were several requests. This is just one, which is the stop sign. The request is to just slow down the traffic. I don't want it to be where once someone dies for it to happen. I've been told, but not certain, that Tamarack is a thoroughfare, so there cannot be a speed bump. Like the previous speaker mentioned, in Encinitas, on the 101, there is several speed bumps. I don't understand why we could not have a speed bump. And it would also be helpful to get feedback from the crossing guard documented about any close calls, get more data, and I would also request to get more data on a weekend and other dates, because what I'm worried is that one accident that happened, it could have happened at 2 in the morning, could have been at 85 miles an hour, and it's not being documented, and it's not being shown to you. So that's making sure that you have all your data right, and those hours, and especially in the middle of the night. I've heard sirens, I'm close enough by Tamarack, hearing sirens at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, right by Tamarack. Thank you.
Thank you. That closes the public comment portion. Now I'll go back to the commissioners and see if anyone has a motion
Discussion
or discussion.
or questions for John?
Any further? Commissioner Linky?
Yes, I have a few I'd also like to say, I think it's okay for the public to submit written comments on these topics, if I'm not mistaken. So I would encourage people to submit written comments to the city, and we'll see them and read them. It's easier for me to process that rather than the 3 minutes. You can write as much as you want, and we can read it, and then you can summarize it. So, and it seems like a lot of the residents feel that speed is a problem, so it would have been useful to have the speed information. So I'm not clear. I'm new on the commission, and I wasn't here for the previous meetings, but I think Mr. Kim did a very thorough and good job on it, with the exception of would like to see the speed information. Several of the residents mentioned site issues, like you can't see the beacon or they can't see down the street, but you said that the site distances were all good. Has there been any investigation of how visible the beacon is and the issues that have been brought up by the public?
After the RRFB was installed, there was one specific complaint that it was pointed in the wrong way, and that's the indication that was on the northwest corner. And since then, it was angled back so that it was more visible. We can certainly take a look again at that curb extension idea. That's more to make the flashing beacon sign more visible, and that could be something that we could look at.
So I go back to citing the mobility element and the encouragement of improving safe routes to school, and probably ask the staff, even if we recommend against the stop signs, but if we look at other alternatives. And one of the residents commented that people don't stop at one of the stops, like the Park Drive stop sign, I think it was. So I'm not sure that I even believe that a stop sign is the best solution at Valley. If all the drivers there are just ignoring stop signs, maybe a different method would be better. I'll make a motion if somebody else doesn't. That's my last comment question.
Can you wait and hear the rest of the commissioners and then you can go back?
Yeah, or someone else can do it too.
Thank you. Anyone else, Bill?
Yeah, it does seem like it's pretty obvious from looking at this view that it might be difficult, and especially in Tamarack at that point is coming uphill, I take it, right? West of Valley.
It flattens out, right at that spot. The spot we're talking about is right there. So when these cars come around this way, it's a blind stop, or a blind sight. Even if it's clear, it's blind. Even if you know it's there, sometimes you don't see it. And if there's cars parked there, it's even worse. So it's right there. The police had told me they were talking about not allowing these people to park there. You can't do that, that's in front of their house. So that's why, for whatever reason, when they were gonna put the curb extensions, that was gonna solve that problem and make it more visible, but I didn't get a chance to ask why that never happened, so.
Yeah, I think that it just does seem to be that there would be some other things that might be more effective. I mean, if speed is really the issue, maybe that needs to be dealt with.
I think you need more than one roundabout, though. You need one at Highland, you need one at Valley, you need one at Park. Like, you need multiples, because people are driving.
We've already got public comment, thank you.
Yeah. So I think that I think you wanted to make a motion, and I would agree that we would look at any alternative to address some of the issues, because it does appear to be a real problem. I can even.
But the issue is speed on Tamarack. Is what
Well, whatever, yeah.
Yeah,
Visibility, exactly.
visibility, speed, I mean, I wrote down speed multiple times,
Yeah.
in a bike lane, for Pete's perspective. I always cover Pete. The interesting thing was that one of the people came up and said, well, they don't even stop at the stop sign by my house. Then they don't even stop at the stop sign there, then why are we asking for a stop sign? So, because again, it becomes an enforcement issue. But yeah, I absolutely agree, speed is, on any of those through fares, continue to be an issue, and I know there was a lot of police enforcement there last year trying to slow people down. So that's one of the biggest issues kind of around the city between traffic and people going fast, so.
Yes, I heard the same thing. Speed is the most concern for the residents, also the blind side for the approaching traffic and pedestrians. We didn't see a pedestrian count that I saw. So I think that some other options could be available. So I would go back to Commissioner Lenke.
We got
Nick, you want to make a motion?
I have one question.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Mr. Kim, was there any talk or discussion, you know, I understand with the public about, in regards to roundabouts or speed bumps or curb extensions, was there anything discussed, like, I believe it's on Gateway, where there's a, Commissioner, I can't remember, is it a chicane?
There's a chicane, there's two chicanes actually.
Was there any consideration or any other thoughts on that within the city?
Not specifically. That chicane on Gateway is placed in an area where there's no on-street parking. It would present a lot of issues on a street like Tamarack in terms of blocking driveways and prohibiting parking. So specifically, a chicane was not discussed.
And are there any chicanes, I don't know if that's the right term?
Yes,
are there
that's.
any chicanes within residential areas?
Not in Carlsbad. I believe that is the only chicane that is present in Carlsbad.
And then the last thing I just have a question on, in regards to, we were talking about speed and school traffic and I guess not abiding to any of the, you know, due to traffic and congestion. Have we worked with the police, like Officer Boyce on cars for working with the school and also working with the crossing guards on getting any information, any information or any intelligence on, you know, what's going on there at Tamarack to make it more of a.
Yes, there's been a lot of work, collaboration with the police department. They've, you know, one of the things mentioned was hearing more police activity. That's because I believe the police have made a concerted effort to provide more enforcement on Tamarack Avenue. And I do want to reiterate in response to the speed issue, we have that speed feedback sign project that would be installing 2 speed feedback signs. And they would be in this picture that you see. One would be between Valley and Park Drive, and the other would be just west of Valley.
And that's just projects how fast you're going?
Yes, and it'll have a message to slow down when a certain speed is displayed.
No plate readers or anything like that?
No plate readers.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We had that 2 years ago, didn't help.
okay. Commissioner Lenke, I'll go back to you.
All right. And again, anyone else is welcome to make the motion, but I can.
Excuse me.
You got another question?
Yep,
Yeah.
Pete.
I just want to make a comment because I was here for the last meeting. And so for those of you that weren't, we had a few more people speak than we had tonight. And there were a few other things that were mentioned. But as far as the stop sign was concerned, most of the people that spoke last time did not feel that would do any good because they don't stop for the existing ones. And they don't control the speed, which was the main issue then as well. At that point, we'd asked the question about traffic calming, and we were told that that isn't permissible under the city's traffic calming program because that only works, that's only set up for residential neighborhoods. So now here we are again several months later, same problem, and we still haven't really considered other alternatives. The curb extensions apparently been brought up before, and nothing's been done about that. There's lots of other alternatives that could be done in the way of traffic calming to get the speed down on that street, which is what everybody seems to want. In the interim between the November meeting and just a couple of months ago, I happened to meet with Councilman Blackburn, who was a police officer, and mentioned what was going on here at this meeting. And he just commented to me that every time he goes to the gym, he hears from the people in that neighborhood. And so he asked if, I said, you know, what can you do? And he said, well, we are counting on you, the traffic commission, to do something about this so that they don't come to us again and again with it. So I think we need to make some pretty strong recommendations to the staff to solve this problem with some kind of traffic calming measure.
Okay.
I see that as two separate motions. One has to do with speed, one has to do with the stop signs that
Yes.
are currently proposed.
Yes.
But
I just wanted to make a comment. Did you make a motion?
I can.
Well, you said there are two motions on.
there should be, there's a
There should
motion to do something about speed.
Right.
And there's a motion.
So you did make a motion?
Not yet, yes.
Nobody's made a
We're just having a discussion now, but there is a motion that's required based on what the staff has brought forward to us that, you know, that we need to adjudicate it in some way, but also the speed issue is a separate entity. It isn't necessarily reflected in the stop sign.
So, just a point of clarification, the curb extensions the purpose of those was only for the signals?
Well, they were also to have the pedestrian would be
Excuse
out a
me.
little bit farther.
Excuse me, can we have the engineer answer?
Oh, okay, the
Thank you.
The curb extensions that were mentioned at the time, I believe, were to make the flashing beacons more visible by pushing them out into the
Okay,
street.
and that was it. It didn't have any other effect in terms of making it easier to cross Tamarack or?
And that would be another factor, is that it would place pedestrians closer to
To the other side.
to the other side. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
That
So
was-
I was gonna make it one motion, but I can separate it into
Okay.
two. I move that we recommend that the city council not establish an all-way stop at the intersection of Tamarack Avenue and Valley Street.
I'll second it.
Either way.
Either way. Voting on the motion. Everybody locked?
You have to do Mona's.
Is,
Mona's not here.
Oh, Mona is not here. Can you abstain here, please?
Abstain and
And
lock.
Absent. It would probably be absent, right?
abstain.
Well, an abstain is a vote.
You can't-
That's all right. That's all right.
It gets us the vote. She's abstained from the vote.
She
so-
abstained from the whole thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, and the second motion is request staff to consider alternatives consistent with the mobility element, including but not limited to policies 3P17 and 3P27, which address pedestrian and bicycle safety and safe routes to school, to address speed and visibility issues at the intersection. And if anybody wants to amend it with something more specific, that'd be good.
Second.
That's the second. I am in trouble here.
And so if you read that section, it talks about traffic calming devices, roundabouts, traffic circles, curb extensions, separated bicycle infrastructure, pedestrian scramble intersections.
I'm gonna say, this is a vote that is not associated with this particular action, so Mona could be involved in that motion.
Okay.
So do we want to bring Mona back for that thing?
She'd
Well,
still
but she
have the
would still have to
conflict.
abstain from
You still have
it.
the conflict because
Yeah.
she's there?
Yes.
All right.
Scratch that last.
Mm.
It's borderline on that one.
Yes.
So I think the motion gets around the residential traffic program is only for smaller streets, but the
Right.
mobility element has language in it that allows you to do it, and I'm citing that, so I think it justified.
Is that clear for you?
Oh, shoot.
Try reading. Can you reset it? No, that's not, Elaine, that's not accurate. He hit the wrong button.
What?
Can you reset?
Fowler hit the wrong button, so.
Oh,
Reset.
I
okay.
have it right.
So hold on just a second, let's start over.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Hey, okay, success.
Good?
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody? Okay, that completes item one. Oh, can I make one suggestion to everyone in the, some people read things differently. When I talk about item one, I look at your item one. When he looks at item one, he looks at the agenda item one. So could you possibly consider changing instead of item, possibly renaming it to attachment or enclosure or something other? So when we start talking about items, we don't know which item we're talking about.
Okay,
Sorry to be picky, but it's clarifying.
okay.
Thank you. Okay. So we're done with item 2.
So we switch, originally item 3.
Okay.